So some of you are going to think this looks really, downright amazing, and some of you are going to think this looks like crap. But $70 worth of new fans on what is already a pretty good cooler. And we're going to see if this makes any sense at all. Welcome to Machines and More. So in my initial coverage for this new Noctua A12x25 G2, one of the things I mentioned was that you can take this new 120mm fan and use it as a heatsink fan. So we're going to see when it actually makes sense to upgrade, because it is an impressive new fan and the performance numbers on a radiator are absolutely excellent, and there's no reason that it doesn't and shouldn't work well on a heatsink, right? But this is not a budget fan, so I did want to discuss with some concrete performance data just for your reference, and also acoustic samples as to illustrate when that upgrade might make sense. So the scenario I called out was the Noctua U12A cooler, and I said you probably don't want to do that. This is a single tower. It's a really good single tower that is equipped with a push-pull set of the Gen 1's NFA 12x25s. And yeah, it's a very good cooler already. So let's just test here with the Ryzen 9 9900X at 161 watts for equivalent noise levels to 1750 RPM on the G1 fans. The G2 push-pull set goes 1550 and 1650 RPM. Here, there's actually a very small difference between the two fans in terms of the temps. The G2 is ahead, but for reference, you can expect no meaningful difference in terms of the clock speeds here. So at the max on the G2s, the G1s get up to 1950 RPM, but the G2s, they're still ahead, but it's still a very small margin. You're unlikely to see any meaningful difference at these levels. So one thing is that the U12A's heatsink is designed around the G1 fans that Noctua equips it with. And the G2s, while they are stronger fans, we just don't see that big of a gap here. So if you already have the U12A, that's why I said it doesn't make too much sense to upgrade. Although if you wanted to, repurpose your G1s as case fans, and then go out and buy the G2s and kind of make that work that way, I guess it could work. It's a very expensive option, but that's one way to do it. But Noctua is actually going to continue bundling these with the U12A, so even they are not updating it until they get a new heatsink, where presumably they would be optimizing it for the new fan. How about another test case? So what if you have a lower cost air cooler? Let's just see if it makes sense to swap in the G2s here. And I'm just using this as a quick example. There's plenty of coolers we could use here, but Cooler Master's Hyper 2-in-2 Black. That's an excellent, simple, single tower cooler. It's great for the NR200P because of its low height. But I'd say that a CPU like the 9900X is just a little bit too high powered for a cooler like this. At full speed or 2300 RPM on the stock fan, it can actually keep the 9900X from hitting the max temp of 95, but it is very loud and moreover has a high-pitched noise. But let's just see how the results are for noise normalized testing. At the max speed for the G2s, the stock 2-in-2 fans spin up to 1800 RPM as well. At this level though, the stock fan hits the max temp, but the G2s come just shy of hitting that limit. But since the stock fan hits the thermal limit, this actually doesn't help us understand what the true difference is, because the CPU is holding back at this point. So limiting the power to a level that's just slightly more than what a 9800X really would draw. At 145 watts, the difference is 2.4 degrees. So just looking at the clock differences here, it's about 54 megahertz. Of course, we're at a lower point on a 9900X's voltage frequency curve, but just an idea there. Perhaps not surprisingly, the G2 fan is better at noise normalized level, and even then with how much one of these costs, if you're in this situation and simply wanting more performance, to an extent, if your cooler is cheaper and a smaller one to begin with, it probably makes more sense to just get a cooler with a bigger heatsink, right? Or more fans. As I mentioned, one of the shortcomings of the G2 is that it is limited to 1800 RPM, so it is not a high-speed fan. At the higher noise level, the stock fan was, in fact, beating the G2. But it was a lot louder, and oftentimes the decibel meter fails to capture the perception of the noise, in that the frequency or the irregular noise quality could be perceived as being louder. So just here's a quick example, both at noise normalized level and also the higher RPM level, just for reference to illustrate this. So in the event or the scenario where you're not happy with the noise profile on your current fan, that could actually be an area where upgrading your fan to the G2 could really improve things. Now it is, again, it's a more pricey upgrade, but it really is a fan with a pleasing noise profile. So one thing to be aware of for air cooler fan replacements is if you have a cooler like this, this is the Thermalright PA120 Mini, and it comes with a fan that has the corners lopped off because if it were a square frame, it could interfere with the mounting mechanism. If you were to use the G2 fan in this PA120 Mini, and I tested with the G1 and G2s, it actually won't increase the height very much, maybe like a millimeter or so. It's actually quite good. This isn't always going to be the case depending on your cooler. It could just have the studs in the wrong place, and that's going to push it up a lot more. So this is not guaranteed, but at least with something like this, it can actually work. So just be aware there's a potential limitation there. While for the 140mm A14 G2, the rounded fan came first, the round version of the 120mm G2 isn't even on Noctua's roadmap yet. So unfortunately, we may still be waiting for quite some time. So just be aware of that. Anyway, I hope you found this helpful for air cooling. Make sure you give a like and make sure you're subscribed. Links are down below, and big thanks for watching.